Hey guys, we are back and we are talking about rotations again. So today we are going to get into the math part of it. So on your notes, follow along as we fill in these blanks to start. So rotations are a transformation in which a figure is turned through a given angle called the degree of rotation, and in a given direction about a fixed point called the center of rotation. In a rotation, the pre-image and image are congruent. The corresponding angles have the same measurement, and the corresponding sides have the same measurement. So below, this is probably the most important part of all of your notes. These are the rules of rotation. So just like we had rules for reflections and translations, these are your rules for rotations. So it says for 90 degrees clockwise, this is the same as 270 degrees counterclockwise. Our rule would be given your original x and y. So for example, let's use -5, 1. If I rotate this point 90 degrees clockwise, my new set of points are going to be, so my y goes where my x would be, so that's going to be 1, opposite x. So that -5, the opposite of -5 would be +5. So when I rotated -5, 1, 90 degrees clockwise or 270 degrees counterclockwise, my new point would be 1, 5. And then we have 90 degrees counterclockwise is the same as 270 degrees clockwise. And our rule for that is xy becomes opposite y, x. And then for a 180 degree rotation, we have xy becomes opposite x, opposite y. So for example, now we're going to put this to the test. It says, what are the coordinates of this point? Well, the original coordinates are 3, 5. And we're going to rotate this point 90 degrees counterclockwise. So that means we are going to be using 90 degrees counterclockwise. We're going to be using this rule up here. So xy becomes opposite y, x. So 3, 5 becomes the opposite of my y was -5. And then x is 3. So that's going to be my new point. And what that's going to look like is when I rotate this point 90 degrees counterclockwise, I'm going to end up at -5, 3. Let's keep going with this. So let's rotate this point 180 degrees. So the original point is, 3, 5. And 180 degree rotation, we're going to be using the rule opposite x, opposite y. So think about if my original point was 3, 5, and now my new point is going to be opposite x, opposite y. What is my new point going to be? When we rotate this 180 degrees, we should get all the way to -3, -5. One more example with the same point. It says, let's rotate this point 270 degrees. So we're going to be using, well, first, it doesn't tell us exactly counterclockwise or clockwise. So remember, when it doesn't specifically tell you, you have to assume that it's counterclockwise. So that rule is opposite y, x. So our original point was 3, 5. So think about what is my new point going to be if it's opposite y, x. You should have had -5, 3. And if I rotate this 270 degrees counterclockwise, that brings me all the way up here, over here, and we are at -5, 3, where that's exactly where we should be. So this last example says, if I told you to rotate the point -2, 5, 90 degrees clockwise, what would be the new point? So 90 degrees clockwise, we're going to be using this rule of y opposite x. So my original y is 5, and then the opposite of my x would be positive 2. So my new point should be at 5, positive 2. So 5. So let's see how that would look. Clockwise, we would be at 5, positive 2, exactly. Now let's go down to the image on your notes. We are going to rotate this image through all of these good rotations over here. So first we need our pre-image coordinates. So the coordinates for A, go ahead and write those down, what that point is at. You should get 2, 6. The coordinates of B, write those down. And C is 6, 1. So now we're going to follow these rules below, and we're first going to rotate this image 90 degrees clockwise. So if you look back at your notes, what's that rule? What's the rule for 90 degrees clockwise? Rule for 90 degrees clockwise would be y opposite x. So for each one of these, you're going to take your original y, but then take the opposite of the x. So for A prime, you should get 6, negative 2. For B prime, take your original y, which is 1, and take the opposite of your x, 1, negative 2. And for C prime, take the original y of 1 and the opposite of your x. So 1, negative 6. And let's see what that's actually going to look like. So if I rotate this image 90 degrees clockwise, that's going to be about right there. And those points would add up. We have A at 6, 2. B prime is at 1, negative 2. And C prime is at 1, negative 6. Next, let's do 90 degrees counterclockwise. So we're always going to be referring back to the pre-image coordinates when we're looking at turning our shape. So 90 degrees counterclockwise, what's our rule going to be for that? Our rule would be opposite y, x. And so going back, so we're going to take the opposite of our y, so that 6 is actually going to be negative 6, and our original x is 2. So our new coordinates would be negative 6, 2. For B prime, opposite y would be negative 1. Take your original 2, so you get negative 1, 2. And for C prime, opposite 1, so negative 1, positive 6. So that rotation is going to look something like this. And it's not perfect on here, but it would be perfect if we were actually doing this ourselves. And you should be copying down these points and making your triangle as we go. And lastly, let's do a 180 degree rotation. So you can probably by now get the hang of what is our rule going to be for 180 degrees rotation. It would be opposite x, opposite y. So all we're doing is we're taking our original point and we're making both of them opposite. So your A prime for this would be negative 2, negative 6. B prime would be negative 2, negative 1. And C prime would be negative 6, negative 1. And that rotation would look like this. And again, you should be plotting those points and seeing the rotation for yourself as well. So after you've done this, you need to go do the rotations, do it number 2, and then take your progress check.